Archie Karas, the man who beat Vegas. This is a story of how a poor man won $40 million in Las Vegas. Let's see how it all happened. Escape from home. Archie Karas was born on the 1st of November 1950 on the island of Cephalonia, Greece. Born into abject poverty, there wasn't much for a young man to do in the neighborhood except engage in mischief and gamble with marbles with his teenage friends to win a bit of money to buy food. His family moved to the United States for a better life, but things didn't quite go as planned. His father was a construction worker who barely made enough money to put food on the table, let alone to pay the bills. To make matters even worse, his father often came home upset and threw fits of rage, making the home very uncomfortable for the boy as he was always at the receiving end. One day his father got so upset that he threw a metal shovel at Karas, just missing his head by an inch. He then ran away from home to avoid becoming a victim of his father's rage. He was just 15 years old when he left home and never went back. His father, Nicholas, who had been struggling with several untreated health problems, died just 4 years later, but even then Karas never went back home. It was a past that he no longer wanted any part of. He got a job as a waiter on a ship and was paid a miserly $60 a month. He worked for a few years before deciding to change the environment for the sake of better opportunities, knowing that he would make a lot more money from working in the main cities. Don't forget to subscribe. Gambling career. Karas saved up a bit of money and decided it was time to move to Los Angeles. Having no real strategy in mind and no backup plan, he found himself in LA and there came across a restaurant that needed hands, so he quickly applied and began working there. Just across the restaurant was a pool hall where people came to play and gamble. Karas visited the pool hall every day, learning the ropes and honing his pool skills. He began to make money gambling at the pool hall, and most times made more money gambling than he did as a waiter. When the pool players began to thin out, he then switched to gambling in Los Angeles card rooms, playing blackjack and poker, and this is where his good fortune began. Karas greatly improved his gameplay, dominating every table that he was on, and had several losses of course, but also made a ton of money from beating astute poker players. He claimed to have broken into millionaire status and lost it all several times during this period. He was a big-time gambler and believed that money came easily, just the same way that it leaves. Over time, he had built his bankroll to more than $2 million and decided that it was time to challenge the big leagues. This became a very bad idea and one that he paid for, with money of course. Karas played on the same table with professional poker players like Doyle Brunson and Chip Reese, who had all thought that he had potential, but still considered him to be a weak player when it came to poker and blackjack. They often gave him handicaps to increase his chances, and many times he came up short. Karas still made money from playing other less experienced players and could afford to live in a luxurious lifestyle, buying whatever he wanted and eating at the most luxurious restaurants. He learned by playing with the absolute best players and lived on the edge. One thing that everyone understood about Karas was that he was not afraid to take a risk, even at the oddest moments. He was extremely confident, and his charisma often made it difficult to know when he had bad cards. He, on the other hand, had improved a lot in his game. He could read people like open books and could tell when they were bluffing. Everything seemed to be working in his favor as he made a name and fortune for himself, but he had one huge problem. He didn't know when to walk away, and if you're unable to walk away from a losing streak, it usually doesn't go well. In December of 1992, he was hit with the biggest loss of his gambling career. He was playing at a casino and the game got heated, high stakes were made, and he took the bait. He had confidence in his abilities and thought that he could make a comeback from the loss, but as the game went on, he began to realize that this was going to be a very bad day. In one single day, he had lost all the money that he owned, leaving him with only $50 in his wallet. This should have been a wake-up call for him, a chance to reevaluate his predicament and possibly take a break from gambling, but instead he did the complete opposite. He knew that it would take a strong will and incredible mental toughness to make a career out of gambling, and a man of his caliber would never allow himself to be weighed down by a loss, no matter the severity. So, what did he do next? He picked up the pieces and drove his car to Las Vegas in search of much greater conquests. He was convinced that the only way to get back everything that he had lost was to play on the most grand frontier, where the bigger names, tougher games, and probably the most cutthroat arena for gamblers existed. And what happened next would shock the world. Karas beats Vegas. When Karas arrived in Las Vegas, he decided to begin at the Mirage, a magnificent casino resort on the Las Vegas Strip, and he recognized someone whom he had played poker with in Los Angeles and quickly caught up to him. He needed a substantial amount of money if he was going to play at the Mirage, so he convinced his newfound friend to loan him $10,000, which the man agreed. Surprisingly, Karas tripled the loan on the poker tables, playing 200 to 400 limit Raz, winning a staggering $30,000. He paid $20,000 to his friend, who was overjoyed at receiving twice the money that he had lent out. With the remaining $10,000, he then made his way to a pool table where he met with a renowned poker and pool player who became his next victim. Karas did not reveal the name of the player, but instead referred to him as Mr. X. He and Mr. X began with a game of 9-ball at $5,000 a game, which Karas dominated, winning several thousands of dollars. The two players then decided to raise the stakes to a $40,000 game. At that point, many gamblers and professionals gathered around to watch them play, with stakes that were so high they'd never been seen before. Karas won $1.2 million before the game ended, and both players took the party to Binion's Horseshoe, another hotel casino, where Karas secured another $3 million win from Mr. X. Karas was willing to gamble with stakes that were irresponsibly high, and very few had dared to try, and so was Mr. X. What made it even more interesting is that Karas was walking around with a $4 million bankroll, and by the end of 3 months he had raised it to $7 million. The word spread about Mr. X's losses to Karas, and this piqued the interest of many professional gamblers. Karas was always up for a challenge and was always present at the Binion Horseshoes poker table with at least $5 million, waiting for anyone willing to play for high stakes. And this is where things get very interesting. Karas began his incredible winning streak by beating 3-time World Series of Poker champion Stu Ungar for $500,000. The next victim was Chip Reese, a legend known as the greatest cash game player of all time. Reese admitted that Karas had beaten him more times than anyone in his career, and Reese lost over $2 million to Karas. Many players who wanted to play Karas were unable to because of the extremely high stakes, which either scared most people or humbled them as they could not afford it. Karas went ahead to obliterate more top players with his profound skills. Prominent players like Johnny Moss and Puggy Pearson also lost to the unstoppable gambling force. No one understood how he was able to beat so many professional players without even being recognized as a household name. The only professional who was on record for beating Karas in the first round while on his winning streak was Johnny Chan. Karas lost at least $900,000 to Chan, however he then beat Chan severely before his streak and even after his 6-month winning streak. His reputation preceded him. He was the boogeyman of poker. Everyone knew who he was because of his achievements and also the big names that had lost to him during this streak. His hands began to grow cold as very few people wanted to play him or could even afford to. At some point, Jack Binion, the owner of Binion's Horseshoe, had capped Karas, placing a limit on his bets to make sure that he didn't exceed $100,000. When that happened, he then switched over to dice, which was easier and faster to win games, as well as more money in a short period, compared to cards, which would take some time on each gameplay. Each play was raking in millions for Karas, and it seemed like no one could beat him. Moving money around became problematic, as he had to move around with millions of dollars on him every day. He always carried a gun with him, and also hired the service of casino security guards who escorted him everywhere that he went. During his streak, it was reported that he was so good, he had won all of the $5,000 chips at Binion's Casino, the highest chip denomination in that time. Before the streak came to an end, Karas had beaten every professional player who had the money to play him. He had single-handedly taken down the elites of the gambling world and had amassed winning over $40 million, a record that no one has ever beat to date. The Great Fall. His winning streak would end in 1995 after a 2.5-year run, and then came the Great Fall. He first parted with $11 million while playing craps, and literally handed back the $2 million he initially won from Chip Reese in a decapitating loss. It did not end there, though. Karas switched to Baccarat to try and change his bad luck, but things would not get any better. He lost $17 million on the table, and with just $12 million left, he took a break from gambling and went back to Greece. The story should have ended there, but the allure and adrenaline of the game kept calling him back. Craving the life that he had left behind, he decided to answer. He flew back to Las Vegas, arriving at the Horseshoe, opting for shooting craps as he felt he'd have more luck there, but he was wrong. In In less than a month, he had lost all of his money up to $1 million, and he felt he needed a change of scenery, and so he went to the Bicycle Club, a poker card room in California. That's where he met Johnny Chan, the only person to beat him during his streak, and for some reason decided to play him in a $1 million freeze-out game. Karas won the game, doubling his bankroll, but a few days later he went to play dice and baccarat, betting at the highest of stakes as usual, and that's when he lost everything. $40 million was gone. Life after the downfall. Karas' story became a popular one and a lesson to many. He still went on a few smaller winning streaks after that, and at some point used $40,000 to win $1 million, which he later bumped up to $4 million, and then lost everything the next day. He's widely known in every casino in Las Vegas, and while he resided in Vegas, his family was based in Greece, so he would travel back to see them at least once a year. Though he ended up losing all the money he had ever made, the name Karas is already embedded in history as the luckiest gambler who ever lived, and his winning streak, the longest one of all time. What are your thoughts on this episode of Lucky Gamblers? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.